Kobe introduced me. I'm Dr. Tyler Chapman. I've been in Brenham for about a little over a year and a half. And when I first came to Brenham, almost immediately, the word and the message I got was, we need to do something with our junior high campus. Over and over, I heard that. So when I went to the junior high, I walked through it and I thought, yep, we need to do something with the junior high campus. And so that's kind of started the process about where we are. Every time I do a presentation, though, I start with our vision and mission. And I always share the vision of Brenham ISD. When I got here, one of the things we did is I needed to make sure I understood kind of the vision that the board and the community had for Brenham. And so we formed a committee. With that committee, we came up with a set of beliefs for Brenham ISD. From that set of beliefs, then we turned that same language, those same conversations into forming a vision statement and a mission statement. The vision statement we have for Brenham ISD, a proud community, inspiring and encouraging excellence for all. Now the words mean something when we write a statement, otherwise it's something you hang on the wall or put it on the shelf. So we also looked at each of the words and said, what does this word mean to us? And without going into all of them, I'm going to point out one word that I always mention because it means a lot to me, and that's the word inspire. Right? I'm a pretty big proponent, obviously, of education. I think it's the greatest profession on earth, the profession that allows all other professions to be possible. So that word inspire, I gave a presentation quite a few years ago, and a gentleman in the back stood up and he said, Tyler, you know, inspire in a biblical sense means to breathe life into. And I thought, I'm still in that, right? Because that fits. It's our moral obligation to not lay out education like it's a buffet at Luby's. It's not get a little math, get a little science, get a little social studies, all right, sprinkle a little CTE on top. It's not that. It's our moral obligation to develop the relationships like Kobe has with the students so that they are inspired and engaged in the learning process. So when they take it home to you guys, they're still engaged in learning what it is we need them to learn. Our mission statement, again, formulated the same way. Collaboration with our families and community, Brenham Independent School District is committed to an exceptional education for all students. So we define in every word. The word that we had to really put in there was that where that place, the word family is. Right? Because we could put parents in there, but that doesn't always fit a lot of our kids. And we thought about putting the word stakeholders, but stakeholders just sounds kind of cold. So through conversation, someone suggested, why don't we put the word families in there, but let's define it. Let's define it such that it's anyone who has a positive impact on our kids. So that can be a mom and dad. It can be a grandpa, grandma, aunt, uncle, sister, brother that's a little older, neighbor. Oftentimes it is a teacher. It is a sponsor. It is a coach. Sometimes it's a preacher. Right? It's a youth pastor. It's a minister. All of those people, including oftentimes, hopefully a positive influence from the circle of friends that they run with, we've got to engage all of those people into the process of educating our kids, into the process of inspiring our kids. So that's the vision and mission for Brenham ISD. When we make decisions, that's the lens we look through. Now, get us to where we are today. One of the things that I want to do is give you a little bit of background about our facilities. Okay? If we go all the way back, September 6, 1875, Brenham is the first publicly funded school in the state of Texas. September 6, 1875, that bell rang, so to speak. It started in 3 churches downtown. From there, over time, about 5 years later, they decided we don't need to educate any longer in the churches. We need an actual building. Okay? So let's move our students to a building. We don't have a building. So through fundraising, they raised $10,000, $2,000 from each of the Giddings brothers, and then donations from anywhere from $500 to $5. Raised $10,000 to build a school that still stands on Alamo Street. Okay? Now there's a few schools in between there that burned down, but in 1927, the community ed building was built as a high school over on Market Street. So that building has housed kids now almost continuously. We're a few years shy, but almost continuously for 100 years. We still have our Pride Academy in there. It's a school for students who are either credit recovery, accelerated learning, needed work half a day, so they learn online half a day. It's also housed for alternative school. So for almost 100 years, that building has been serving the kids of Washington County and Brenham ISD. 1930, our central office was the original Germania office building. Our Early Childhood Learning Center in 1950 was originally built over there by the old Pickard School. and that's been added on to quite a few times. That houses our pre-K 3 and 4-year-olds. 1963, the junior high was built. At that time, it was built to be the high school. Moved in the first class 1967 in the high school. 1970, Brenham Middle School was built. It's been renovated a few times. I'll talk about that in a second. 1987, Krause was built. In the 1990s and 2000s, we built 2 metal buildings. One of them houses Durham Transportation that we contract for their transportation services. The other one houses our maintenance department. In 1997, this facility was built, and then renovated a little bit, and they added this on. And I'll talk more on that in a minute. Brenham Elementary in 2006, and our newest facility is Alton Elementary, was built with a bond in 2014. A little bit of bond history, recent history anyway. We go back to 1994. A bond was proposed to the taxpayers much like we are today. That bond was for $23.6 million. That bond built this school. Okay. 2003, asked for a bond for $35 million. That one did not pass. 2004 asked for $10 million, and they built Brenham Elementary out of that. And then 2012 for $25.9, they built Alton Elementary and added on to the middle school. Added on the sections that is the library, some office spaces. What we use now is band hall entrance and things like that. So that's our recent bond history. Tax rate. Comment was made one time that taxes continually go up. From a school tax standpoint, they actually continuously go down. And I'm going to give you a really surface level description or explanation of school financing. So in school finances, you really have 2, I'm going to call them buckets of money. One bucket of money is your M&O, right here, this column, maintenance and operations. I can liken that to our checkbook at home. That's where you pay your bills out of, you buy supplies out of, you pay our teachers out of. In fact, about 80%, a little over 80% of our M&O tax base goes to pay salaries for teachers. Then the next column to the right is our interest and sinking, INS. I equate that to going to the bank to get a mortgage. When you go to the bank, you want to build or renovate a house, you go to the bank and you ask for money. The state of Texas says when we need to build or renovate, you go to the taxpayers and you ask them for a bond and see what they say, okay? So that's our INS rate also. There's only a few things that you can go to the taxpayers to ask for money for. Renovating facilities, building facilities, buying school buses, buying technology. It's pretty much the big umbrella of what you can ask for. You also have to set a tax rate that will make your payment. The state won't let you default on your payments. Okay? So you have to set a tax rate that will make whatever that payment is. But you also can't set a tax rate higher on your INS side than that payment. You can't overtax, right, on the INS side. All right, so our total tax rate currently for 90 cents on the M&O and 8 cents on the INS is a 0.9884. So where do we compare with surrounding schools? I'll give you a second to look at that right there, because you see where we are compared to the surrounding schools. The largest difference is not on the M&O side. There's a little difference on the M&O side. For the most part, we're all probably about right there. But the largest difference is on the INS side. It's districts that have gone out for bonds to either build schools, renovate schools, transportation for buses or technology. So how did we get to where we're standing here today with the proposed bond? As I said, when I first got here, I was told, hey, let's take a look at the junior high. When I looked at the junior high, we did facility study on the junior high. Yes, the junior high facility is in not great shape. Not great shape simply because we didn't maintain it. It's been maintained quite well. It's just old. Remember, it was built in 1963. Okay? But we didn't want to just tunnel vision on that. If we're going to come to the taxpayers, we had to have a much longer lens than just simply saying, let's fix the immediate problem, because maybe we have other problems that are not as surface level. So one of the things we all are aware of is that Washington County is growing. You see housing developments all over the place. But in those houses, do we have school-age kids? That's the question. So we hired a demographer to come and look at that. Someone that does demography all across the state. And through his study, he found that in the average house in Washington County, there's 0.3 school-age kids. The average in Texas, I think, is around 1.1, 1.2. But that reiterates the fact that we have a lot of retired people here. We have a lot of people that don't have school-age kids that live here. So when he applied that number to the number of houses that are growing, he was able to come up with a number of growth rate for the next 10 years, from anywhere from 1.2 to 1.6% annually, which equates to about 900 students over the course of the next 10 years. That's very manageable. That's by no means is that fast growth. By no means is that say, oh my gosh, we got a lot of kids coming, right? As long as we stay in front of it. But the other piece is you have to look at your current facilities and say, do we have space for 100 or 200 students annually every year over the course of the next 10 years? And so we looked at our facility, we looked at our elementaries, and currently every one of our elementary classrooms is full. Our Early Childhood Learning Center, again, the campus that houses our pre-K3 and pre-K4 over there by Pickard School. We had the discussion today. We're moving 2 portables there. Probably have to do 4 portables there for next year because of the numbers. We're full. Okay? So that's an immediate problem we have to try to solve. Looking at other elementary campuses, where can we and what can we do? So that needed to be part of the conversation we had with our bond planning committee, which was the next step. Let's form a bond planning committee. We chose about 42 people from across the community to come and sit and just simply listen. Give them the facts that we have here, then also walk and look at. So we had a different meeting at every one of our different campuses except for Alton, our most newest campus. We met first at the junior high. We talked about demography. And then we took a tour of the junior high. They walked in the locker rooms. They walked in the portables. They walked outside. Then the next meeting we met at a different campus. Talked about our stuff, walked around the building, walked through the CTE facility. The next meeting we had another tour, okay? Different campuses each time. But we also took them, loaded everybody up on the Yellow Dog, and we took them to College Station. Because I needed the committee to see the differences of philosophies in architecture, right? Because this facility right here was built for 2,500 students. If you go with TEA specs, capacity of 2,500 students. We have about 1,550. We need 900 more students in this school, in that cafeteria. So you look at structural capacity versus actual functional capacity. Sure, we can pack them in, but can they move in the hallways? Can they use the library, the cafeteria? Can they maneuver within those spaces that are common areas? And that's where functional capacity comes in. So I needed the committee to see. So we went over to College Station. We looked at an elementary that was, I think, about 4 or 5 years old. We looked at a middle school that was about that same, and then we looked at one of their high schools that I think was about 10 years old. And the difference they saw very quickly was the hallways are a little bit wider, the ceilings are a little bit taller, the cafeterias are more like an open place, okay? And so with all of that knowledge, we, over the course of those meetings, we kind of listened. And every time someone said, hey, I wonder if we've thought about it, or hey, I wonder if we could, hey, I don't know that we could do, we would write it down. Right? A lot of times they didn't even know. We're just writing down their comments so that we could come back to them and say, okay, we heard this, we heard this, we heard this. And that formulated a list of 51 projects. From that 51 projects in the last 2 or 3 meetings, we started to narrow down to say, okay, this is a wish. We'd love to have that, but that's not really something we need. But this is something we have to have, right? Because it could cause problems. And so from that list of 51, they narrowed down to 13 projects, okay? From those 13 projects, this is what's on there. And I have some literature. I saw you taking pictures with literature that we can give you too, but you're welcome to take pictures. The first thing everybody on the committee agreed upon, and let me even back up one more. The way we started narrowing was we gave them each a sheet and said, here's all the projects you guys talked about. If you were going to form a bond, put it on paper. What would you do? What would you put down on there? And just about every one of the bond planning committees came up with pretty much the same list of stuff, which is on the screen here. The first thing, new junior high school. But the junior high would house a 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade configuration. That's a configuration that about 75% of the United States middle school age have. It also allows those 6th graders to take advantage of the electives the 7th and 8th grade teachers have and kids have. Right now our bands and our band teachers go down to the middle school and they teach them. So it's a great opportunity right there. The other half of that first sentence says expanded locker room for game day use. Because one of the problems we found when we took a tour of Cub Fieldhouse over at the stadium was there's no female locker rooms in Cub Fieldhouse. So when our female athletes leave here to go to the track to run, or they go to Cub Stadium to play a soccer game, if they don't change here, they change in the concession stand restroom over there. When schools come to us from Bryant, College Station, Magnolia, Montgomery, wherever they're coming from to play our female athletes in track or soccer, they drop them so they can change their clothes in the concession stand restroom. There's no female locker rooms up there. So we knew we had to overcome that because that's, number one, just wrong. But number two, it can become a Title IX problem. Equal access to facilities, equal access to programs and opportunities. So we have to fix that problem either way. The committee knew this, so we figured if we can take the junior high that we have proposed to build in the big field between the current junior high campus and Cub Stadium and slide it as close to Cub Stadium as we can be efficient with our money by utilizing the locker rooms that are junior high locker rooms all day long. Now in the afternoon, we can use those for girls' track and different things like that. So we're not having rooms just sitting dark all day long at the stadium that we just paid for, or dark all afternoon when we're not in the junior high. Trying to be as efficient with the money as we can by using those spaces as efficiently as possible. So that's the first one. This next set of bullets all kind of has to do with the high school campus. You guys remember what year the high school was built in? 1997 we opened it up, okay? Bonded in 1993. So that time frame, the philosophy in education during that time was no child left behind. Everybody's going to college, okay? So when you had programs, like when I was in high school, and some people who I can tell are my age were in high school, you know, we had electronics, we had auto body, we had auto mechanics, general motor repair, construction maintenance, all those things, right? All those programs that built a skilled labor force that you could leave high school and go right into the workforce and make a lot of money really well, make a living. Well, no child left behind. When those people retired, those programs went by the wayside because everybody needed 4 years of math, 4 years of science, 4 years of social studies, 4 years of English language arts. There's no time for auto body. Wasn't an emphasis on it because everybody's going to college. Right? So by no fault of that, it's just simply the time frame and the philosophy this facility was built under. And so we see now that philosophy has left us a gap in the skilled labor force right now. We don't have a lot of those individuals that have those skills that they got while they were in high school. And so the pendulum has swung the other way. We're starting to increase as many programs as we can because industry shows us that we need that skilled labor force right out of high school. We know not everybody needs to go to college. We make plenty of money doing a lot of other things. We need to provide opportunities for kids. For us to provide those opportunities, these facilities were not big enough. The auto tech down here, you have 2 lifts in there, right? One lift has a teacher with 14 kids, the other lift a teacher with 14 kids, and a waiting list on there. From year before to this year, we've had an increase in student participation in CTE, career and technical education courses of almost 654 kids. Now, some of those are one kid taking multiple classes, but that's 654 opportunities for kids to either gain some type of a skill, or sometimes equally as important, figure out, hey, I thought I liked to weld, but now I realize I don't want to weld. And they don't waste time going to TSTC and money trying to figure out something they don't want. Okay, which I think is equally as important. So, the first 2 bullets right here. Expand the career and technology education building. Add on to this building. Build spaces that are much larger. Renovate this facility. Make sure that those shops have enough space that we can weld and have some safe areas to do it. Take some of our career and tech classes that are in the academic building, which is most of our freshman level classes. If I'm an auto tech guy and I'm into auto mechanics, I don't want to spend my whole freshman year learning how to hook. I want my hands underneath that hood, okay? Our culinary arts is all in that building. They use 2 classrooms. One's just a regular classroom. The other one is a home economics classroom. They learn to cook on residential stoves. There's nothing wrong with that. But if I want to be a culinary arts student that goes off and works in a kitchen or become a chef, probably a little bit better if I train on a commercial stove or oven. I always use this example too. In there, when they're cooking stuff where they have to fry it, or when they're cooking stuff that has purple onions, all right? What happens when you start cutting into a purple onion? What's your kitchen going to smell like for a while? All right? You're going to smell that for quite a while. So when they start cutting those purple onions up, they raise the 3 windows up in the classroom over here. They take circular fans and bungee cord them to the screen so it can suck that smell out. That's their exhaust fans. Now, if you've ever been to one of our events, they cater our events all the time. It's amazing what food they make, and yet those are the conditions. teachers do the best that they can with what they have. But that's another program opportunity that, if given the chance, we could afford some actual culinary arts space. Cruzy Fieldhouse. Again, similar situation to Cub Fieldhouse. There's not any female coaches' locker rooms over there. Right? So if our female coaches have to change to go to softball or whatever, our female softball athletes are in there changing, limited access to showers, no female locker rooms for coaches. So we need to renovate that to allow for that space. Cafeteria. Again, functional space versus structural, or functional capacity versus structural capacity. We've got enough classroom space, but when our kids start to maneuver in the hallways, especially when they come to lunch, and they get in that cafeteria, it's pretty crowded. And I think it's pretty crowded because the space is not used very efficiently with the layout of the benches and different things. We have that thing in the middle, but also opportunity to expand our cafeteria into that courtyard that's right there. Marching band pad. The marching band, they practice right out here in the grass. When they're practicing in the mornings, it's August, September, and they got the dew going on their feet. It gets pretty nasty. Mr. Redding has been asking for this for quite a while. We said, all right, again, can we be efficient? If we put a concrete marching pad up there that you practice on in the mornings or whenever you need to practice, but then we also have an event that we have some parking needs for our extracurricular events, theater, or whatever it might be, it can serve as extra parking or spillover parking. So this is pretty much the high school set right here. This set of bullets, it's kind of some extra stuff that, again, is necessary that we have to have, that the committee recognized very quickly. The first one, district-wide accessibility upgrade. That's handicap accessibility. Most of our campuses, with the exception of possibly Alton, were built with a completely different set of codes for handicap accessibility. We had a young man on the planning committee who was bound to a wheelchair, and for him to maneuver at the junior high or even some of our other campuses was pretty tough because it's just not handicap accessible. So that's something we have to do either way. District-wide security upgrades. Most of our campuses were built before Columbine. All of them were built before Santa Fe. So security philosophies has changed in how we protect our kids while they're here at school with us more than they're with their parents a lot of times during the week. So what can we do there? So we put some money in there to help make our kids as secure as possible without making our schools look like prisons. That's the key. Internet fiber upgrade to Alton Pride and Maintenance. Our kids all have to take the state testing that we love. They all have to take that online now. We have to have the capacity and the radios and the Wi-Fi in the rooms for them all to get on at the same time. That's difficult. We don't have that. That's part in there. We have to do that. Fire redundancy line. Fire redundancy for our Wi-Fi again. We have fiber that comes in that's a big enough fiber line that allows us to get all of those kids online at the same time. But if something were ever cut that fiber line, we're down completely. Twice in the last 6 months we've been down completely because those lines were cut. Miles Wharton was one of them. Where was the other one? Ryan, remember?
Greens Point.
Greens Point was the other one. So miles away from here, but we were dead in the water because that runs everything from our phones, computers, everything. So you put a redundant line in so that if something is broken on the front line, you have a smaller line that's less expensive, but can handle the capacity to keep your business going, basically. All of our kids could not get on, but it would get us where we're not using tract phones to call our campuses. And then the last one, and this is how we also, combined with pulling 6th grade up into the junior high, this is how we address the overcrowding and the 10-year projected growth at the elementary schools. So as we were looking and saying, okay, ECLC, we're putting portables in this summer. Some of our other campuses, they're all the classrooms are taking. So as we grow a little bit, what is our response for that? Build another building, add on to those buildings. So we had all of that as part of our list, and someone in the group said, what if we just simply reconfigured our grade levels? And so we chased and we did the research and said, okay, I don't have a problem with looking at this, but I want to make sure if we're going to restructure our grade levels, like we have suggested here, where we take our elementaries and turn them into pre-K through 5th grade campuses. If we do that, that needs to be an academic decision, not a facilities decision. We need to do what's right academically for our kids. So as we researched, we realized that if I'm a new student at ECLC, say I'm a 4-year-old, I'm going to be a new student in Brenham ISD 5 times. I'll be a new student at ECLC, be a new student at the elementary, be a new student at the middle school, a new student at the junior high, and a new student in high school. Now, it doesn't seem like much, but research shows that our kids, every time they change one of those learning environments, there's about a month to 2 month lag before they get comfortable with their surroundings. They feel good about simple things we take for granted, like what is the routine in the cafeteria? Who is the counselor? Who's my principal? Who's my new teacher and all that, okay? So if we can cut that down, we also add in the factor that now teachers, principal, administration, and counselors know that child from the time they're 4 all the way to the time they leave us in 5th grade. So we can target the needs of the students as they go through. We can take a 4th grader and allow them, who may be reading a little slow, allow them to be a partner with the 1st grader to read to them. Now that 4th grader is a rock star, and the 1st grader gets someone to read to them. So there's lots of opportunities. There's always hesitation about, are you going to have a 5th grader with a 5-year-old? But you structure your day, you move the building such the way the grade levels are, so that they're not sitting in the cafeteria at the same time. Lots of positives, and you procedure around the negatives, okay? So by simply taking the middle school, taking 12 classrooms that are closest to Cub Stadium, from the outside, punch in some plumbing, you put bathrooms in those classrooms for our pre-K and kindergarten classes. If you're a pre-K or kindergarten teacher, you've got 14, 15, 16 little ones, you don't want to load them all up and take them to a restaurant or a restroom in the hallway, which is what we have at ECLC, right? So they want the restrooms in there. So there's a minimal price in there to renovate, to add those restrooms in there, and then restructure so we have 4 elementary campuses that are pre-K through 5. So Alton Elementary, Brenham Elementary, Cozy Elementary, and then the middle school would become a 4th elementary school, all housing pre-K through 5th grade. Our Early Child Learning Center would go away as a campus, so we save money on a cafeteria staff and administrative staff. We still use the building for some capacity in the district. It does not go away from the district. Just a few minutes ago, the CTE programs that we had, design and multimedia, teaching and training, engineering, some other things that we work with Blend. One of the things I want to point out is we currently send students to the Hody Center for welding, bus them over there. Next year, we have a lot more plans to basically fill up the Hody Center. So it's not a, well, we have the Hody Center to spill into. If we continue to promote these programs for our kids, we'll fill the Hody Center up next year, as well as the spaces we have here. So what is the total cost? Proposition total cost over there on the right, $153,980,000. Looking at the breakdown of that, I want to back up a slide. And it's on the handouts, I'll show you in just a minute. This piece and those 2 bullets, so those 3 bullets right there are 94% of that bond, okay? 94% of the bond is the CTE facility and the new junior high. The other stuff is stuff we have to do. It needs to be done. It's going to have to be done one way or the other. Okay? So the impact on a household. $200,000 house, that's $497 per year annually. Now I'll tell you, these are on projections of because I get this question a lot, projections on a 30-year finance of a bond. You can go as much as 40, that's pretty long. You can go as little as you need to, but these projections are on a 30-year projection. You see in the middle right there, ages 65 and older, their taxes are frozen. Both the tax rate is frozen, so it doesn't impact them, and values are frozen, so it doesn't impact them on their homestead. It's frozen. What does that do to our overall tax rate? It raises it to $1.23. Where does that put us with surrounding area? Same graph you saw earlier, I just added in what would be the proposed if it were to pass. So it puts us right about, Carrie, what you were saying is probably the average up there. A little bit above that maybe.